I would like to welcome everybody to Inside Yonkers City Talk episode number 3. Sorry about last week. Last week we ran into some problems, but that was taken care of. Today we have Mr. AJ Woodson of Black Westchester Magazine. Mr. AJ Woodson, how are you?
How's it going?
I'm all right. So we have a really important topic to talk about today, don't we?
Yes.
All right. So I've been following the Westchester Corrections Association within the last couple months, and their posts have increased. They weren't posting as much, but lately they have been increasing, and their posts have been very concerning. A lot of them claiming a lot of sexual harassment claims, a lot of long mandatory shifts, sexual as well as ineffective equipment. Can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Well, the first story that I've covered from them, I get a lot of calls from the various correction officers. Most of the time, they don't want to speak on the record. Understandably, like everything else. But
Yeah, a lot of people are scared of retaliation, which is very common, unfortunately.
right. So the first complaints that I was starting to get was about maternity leave, paid maternity leave. Um, so officers, female officers, have to work almost their whole pregnancy. You know what I'm saying? And then they have to take their own time afterwards. And what happens a lot of times, they're working double, 16-hour shifts a day to accrue more paid leave, so they can take the time off. And as I started looking to it, I started talking to a couple of the county legislators that I knew. And legislator Christopher Johnson, who represents Yonkers, he said he was working on a bill. Now, this goes back, it's probably a year or so ago, well, maybe longer, but I think at least a year ago. So he was aware of it because he said his legislative aide, also a county worker, not just a jail, also had to use her own personal time after she gave birth. So he was putting a bill through. And I think we had another conversation when he was telling me he was going to put the bill through, and he was asked to hold by Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, to hold off on that. I spoke to Deputy County Ken Jenkins before that, and he was saying that it's a contract, like it'll be a contract negotiation type thing. So I did some homework. New York State, I believe in 2016, New York State touts one of the best family leave situations for the employees, including maternity leave. And what it would take, according to what I read on the state site, is for the county to actually opt in. So they can take advantage of what the state approved. And it gives a lot of
Um,
options. It gives a lot. Wait, it's going to give a lot of. It gives options where they opt in. I guess where they pay for it, or they give the officers the opportunity, to pay a little extra so they can pay for it themselves. But so they would have that right. And
Now, I don't mean to cut you off, but in regards to that, I also saw that they were posting that some are not actual county employees; they're contracted by private companies. How does that work? Are they're still guards? Do they still get the same training requirement? How,
I don't
apparently,
know. I don't
apparently
know.
that these people from the private companies they get treated way better than the actual county employees.
I don't know. I know that what I found out and from some correction officers is the higher up female officers, like sergeants or whatever. They're taking off. They're taking and put in a situation where they have no inmate contact. You know what I'm saying? While they're pregnant, but the actual female correction officers have to continue. They continue to have inmate contact. Why?
And
Why that's
some have been assaulted, right?
right now. I was going to say, while that's a problem. Moving on, one of the second stories I covered was female correction officers talking about being sexually harassed and abused by the inmates. And when they report it, they get like, I guess they have to be out of the cell a certain amount of time or whatever. They get 1 hour less free time out of the cell. Like that's all that happens to them. You know, there's no discipline. They're not separated or anything. And basically they can almost do what they want. I mean, sexually harassed, sexually assaulted in some cases, and, you know, have stuff thrown on them like feces and stuff, you know, thrown at them. You know what I mean? And so 2 or 3 of the county workers, and I covered this and I sent this to you, they actually testified for the county, which I think was the county execs people and the county legislators, you know, the people in the county. And they thoroughly explained how they fear for their lives, and, you know, how, you know, an officer sometimes is an officer for like 60 inmates or something, I believe. I don't quote me on that, but I think it's something like that. So, you know, that's a dangerous situation to be in. You know what I'm saying? When you're being harassed,
60 people against you. That's a lot, you know.
And you're not nothing's happened to them when you're being abused or when you make these complaints, nothing's being done. So that being said, going back to the first issue, when you have these pregnant officers who are not removed from inmate contact, you know what I mean? The stress on, you know, a lot of stuff is not even just physical. Sometimes it's your mental.
It becomes a mental stress, you know?
Making it a harder pregnancy. And what if you have a difficult pregnancy where it requires a lot more doctor visits and stuff, but you got to work these double shifts now?
Being overstressed, also, you can have a miscarriage. You can end up losing a child.
Right. So you're working double shifts, 16-hour days, not having time to be able to go to get the doctor, the prenatal care that you would get from a doctor ahead of time. So some of the issues that we covered in the beginning. There's been a lot of other issues, but those were the 2 primary ones. And again, I know the county is aware of the maternity leave situation because I talked to a few county legislators, but Chris Johnson was the first one that I really had an interaction with. We went back and forth. We had a conversation. I alerted some of the other ones. They said they would look into it, but never got back to me. And I talked to the deputy county exec Ken Jenkins, and when I told him what I was being told, that this was a situation where all the county had to do was opt in, he said, no, this has to be negotiated by the union. And, you know, when you have these union negotiations, I mean, most of the things that the union is fighting for is more money, you know, a bigger raise.
More money. And then with the request of an increase of money, it takes even a longer time, a longer process to get it approved. So then they have to wait longer.
So a lot of some people in the union and a lot of the correction officers feel like that the deputy county exec is dangling over their head, like, we'll discuss this at contract negotiation time, but then, you know what I'm saying, we'll use that to give them a little more money to, you know, to get that situation to go where they won't be arguing as much about that. And, you know, the bottom line, you know, that's one of the biggest things in those contract negotiations is, you know, a bigger raise, you know what I'm saying? So, and from my research, again, it's on the New York State website. I'll find it and I can send it to you later because I was reading it on it earlier. It lists that the county can just opt in, and it gives them 3 examples of how to opt in. One is, I think they're covering the cost or whatever, or 2 is they put a situation where the officers have the right to, you know, given the opportunity to pay a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? So this will be included. And they're not even giving the officers that.
What are the officers saying before I don't forget about this other topic regarding that? What are the officers saying about the long 16-hour shifts?
They're not saying nothing. I mean, it's not safe. I mean, you know, you're pregnant. You know, and some women have.
It's very uncommon, even for someone that's not pregnant. for
Well,
jail.
well,
Any jail guard works 16 hours, right?
no, well, they have this thing where they're if they don't have enough people for the next shift when you get ready to get off, you get forced. So
Yeah,
there's a
you
lot
get mandated.
you get mandated to stay, and a lot of the correction officers have medical letters that why they can't work. So that lowers the number of officers available that can stay. So a lot of the same officers are forced to stay over and over, whether they wanted to or not. So there's that. You know what I'm saying? So, but these women are not working because they necessarily because they're forced. They're working the double shifts to accrue. You know what I'm saying? The enough more paid leave, so
Right.
afterwards they can stay out a little bit longer.
So what's going on with trying to fix that? Because it becomes a stress thing, a stress factor for these guards as well as the inmates. When these guards become stressed out, the inmates do feel it, as well as when the inmates become stressed out, the guards start feeling the rap. You get what I mean?
Right. It's the county's answer to this whole thing is that let your union negotiate it. So I mean the county can do something about that.
Okay, so
Also,
also,
and I'm correct. I said so they would get more paid leave. So they work the overtime, so they get more time. I guess they accrue time
yeah,
with your
you
hours
rack
that you
up the
work.
PTO.
So if you work in 16-hour days every day, you accrue a little bit more time that you will be
Right.
able to have off. So
Is that PTO?
it's earn time to take off or something like that.
Right.
For the correct time.
So now another topic that raised my ears was most, if not all, officers are carrying proper protective equipment, such as little as pepper spray. And if they get it, majority of it is ineffective, as in it's not up to date, it's expired, or not working at all.
That's going on with a lot of police departments. So not just our county.
Yeah,
There's a couple of municipalities that have outdated bulletproof vests and stuff like that. But I don't know that that's the case necessarily at the county. That's not one of the things that I've heard. I've heard a lot of different things.
That was based on one of their posts, talking about that photo of pepper spray out of a box or something. But if not, then that's all right. What about?
I don't think the COs carry pepper spray. I don't think they're.
I wasn't aware of that either, but I only followed up on it
because I know they don't have weapons and stuff like that, and I don't think they carry pepper sprays because
I know that they carry weapons outside, not inside.
So they're like only supervisors carry. I think only the supervisors actually carry pepper spray. But like I said, you have some officers that it's like they could be with 60 inmates, so an inmate could overpower you and take that from you. You know what I'm saying? Like if they all. So I don't think they carry that at all. I don't think that's an issue. You muted yourself.
Sorry. So some there's been reports of female officers claiming sexual harassment by senior superiors that have been ignored.
Well, I mean, you have a situation where you report it, and if nothing's being done, you possibly get retaliated against. You report like complaints of all those kinds to the EEOC. You know what I'm saying? But nothing's being done.
So all right.
We have somebody say yes to that in your comment section.
He said yes. He did. Damon Jones. So all right. So is the Westchester County guards being overworked? Is there enough staffing right now at the county jail? You're saying that there's one guard per 60. Just rough. It's a rough estimate.
And that's an estimate. I don't know that's the exact.
Right. It's a rough estimate. So let's say that maybe one guard per 30 inmates. That's still dangerous, But if not a lot of people know that it's like a sector car outside in the city with two cops in one car. They serve a lot more than just 30, 50 inmates, obviously. So, are they overstaffed? Understaffed? Are you hearing that they're being overworked?
Well, correction officers, it appears that they're being overworked because I keep hearing from the correction officers I know that they're being forced to stay, 2, 3, sometimes 3 times a week. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're ready to go home and they have to stay. I don't know if that's an overstaffing issue. I understand some officers may have medical letters or excuses why they can't stay. So the ones that can are definitely being overworked.
All right. So Westchester Corrections Association. That's the page, right? So
WCA, yes.
they're claiming that there is a specific superior in the jail that likes to bully the inmates and also as well as bully some of the guards. That he has taken advantage. I don't know who it is, if it's a female or a gentleman, that they've been taking over advantage of their powers and retaliating against these guards that have complained and whatnot.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot about a specific office of a specific person. I don't know the name. I have not got the actual name of the person, but officers are having a lot of problems with him. There's been trying to think of some of the situations. I get so many calls.
I heard one, the recent one this week. After we confirmed this interview, the gentleman was supposedly looking at the security camera to see how long the corrections officer lasted in the bathroom.
Yes, I did hear that, and I believe it's a captain. It's a captain. As much as I know,
That's what I've heard too. It's a captain.
Captain. Yeah, I know. I've been getting calls of harassing behavior, but nothing's being done about it. And
why not? Would you know why?
At this point, even reporting it, if nothing keeps getting done, you stop reporting it. You know what I'm saying? Because once it gets back to the captain that you report, whatever, and then you got to deal with that captain. You have to work under that captain. So,
yeah, that's very unfortunate, especially when you all work indoors at the same place. There's nowhere else to go,
And no, but I mean, and it's like with any other government thing, retaliation is a real thing. Like, you retaliate so that the people under you don't do whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? You make an example out of that one or two people that did say it, and usually the person stops saying it, and everybody else watching will not say it because they see nothing happen, so nothing gets done. So
it's very unfortunate. So I know that you run Black Westchester, so you are very very in tune with with the community. How is the Black community dealing with the jail? Are we seeing more inmates? Are we seeing less inmates? Are we being able to reduce arrest in Westchester? Can you talk to me about that?
Well, we have bail reform. The bail reform. Okay, so first off, I say this all the time on our show. We call for something. We demand something. We say, we ask our elected officials, you need to do this. You need to do this. People were being held in jail for small crimes, but they couldn't pay the bail, so they were being held. You know what I'm saying? So they give death appearance tickets. So they did this. So people were calling for a bail reform. We got a bail reform, but the bail reform needs to be reformed because now I'm hearing from a lot of officers, and I'm seeing a lot of situations where people are doing things, and then they're out the next day. You know what I mean?
They're getting away with it like nothing. It's like a damn video game now.
So to answer your question, I would believe that there are less people in jail now than there normally was because there's no one in there waiting for bail. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people sitting in there waiting for their bail. And now with
Right.
bail reform, they're not sitting in there now.
So now you mentioned bail reform. Did you see recently that the gentleman Pedro Hernandez, I believe was his name, the one that really was the face of bail reform, was recently arrested on gun charges?
I saw that, and with everything going on, I actually didn't follow that story. I just saw the headline and people sent me the link, but I didn't really read. I can't even speak too intelligently about it because I didn't follow it. Like, you know what I'm saying? You know, I also do the newspaper, and I lay out the newspaper, and it's like it's a 24-hour a day job. Like, so those things that I see, I don't get a chance to read about them. Sometimes I'll talk.
You need to get back to it, but then something else comes up.
Right.
And
so I have that earmarked to read. I just have not read it yet, to be honest. So I'm not sure what was going on with that.
And Pedro Hernandez, he was the teenager that was wrongfully not convicted, but he was put in jail for, I believe, a couple years ago. I don't remember, 2017, for shooting someone. Now, he was never convicted, but apparently the detectives forced him into admitting that he shot this person, even though the person that he supposedly shot also said that he didn't shoot him. So because he was there waiting in jail the whole entire time, that's the reason they made bail reform, because he waited there innocently. I say quote unquote because these guys, they always run back into committing crimes and stuff. He got lucky, that's my opinion. So he got out after all these politicians and city officials helped him out and stuff, and now he is back arrested after gun possession, drug possession.
Well, again, I can't speak too intelligently on his case in particular. And he may have been what they say the face of, but the black community, the black and brown community, have been calling for bail reform for a long time, and then demanding it. It's like the community has been demanding this for a long time. There's been too many people, like the situation where it was the young man in Rikers who died because he was in there all that time.
He was all in there all that time, innocently. He didn't. Oh, for the stolen book bag.
Something like that.
He stole a book bag, and it became a mental health crisis for him, where he ended up committing suicide before anything was ever done.
Right. So I'm not saying this gentleman isn't the poster child for bail reform. I mean, the media, and being someone in the media, we like to give tags to people. So I don't know that he's the face of it, but I know it was more than just him that was a demand for bail reform. But yeah, I get like I said, I get a lot of these calls. Sometimes I can do something. I'm gathering a lot of information. Like I said, we were working on a story with the whole maternity leave and the county opting in, and we're working on that. I'm still gathering a lot of information. It's hard because correction officers cannot talk to me on the record, and you don't want to continue to do too many stories. Would be like anonymous source this, anonymous source that, anonymous source that.
Right.
And then, being black media, black community media, we have to have extra facts and extra things to back up what we say that maybe say a News 12 or Low HUD wouldn't, because we're questioned. You know what I mean? Because we're
I totally get it. So this was a short show. I want to get straight to the point. We're going to do a little more research and investigation on this, because I want people to understand that this might be the Westchester County Jail, but there's majority of guards and staff that are from Yonkers that work at the Westchester County Jail. One of
the things I'm researching, and I got a lot of complaints on. So this particular captain that I was talking about, his son, this is according to correction officers, his son sleeps on post for 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? He never gets written up. His father's in charge.
Is his son a guard?
I think he's a correction officer. Yes, and he, and other officers get in trouble for sleeping on. You know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying?
I would imagine on the clock, right?
Right, but his son, as several officers have told me, his son has been documented sleeping, and nothing ever happens to him. So it's you protect your son, but you're going hard on the officers, creating a hostile work environment. And I heard somebody say, I saw one of the comments that it says, and then the inmates suffer. Well, I guess if you make it hostile for the correction officers, I can see how possibly that they're gonna be harder. They're gonna take it out on the inmates sometimes. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Like I said before, when you make it hard for the CO,
right,
the inmate.
There's a saying: shit trickles down, not up. So you know what I'm saying? If your boss comes on you, you come on the people after. So I mean, these are just some of the issues, but Black Westchester is looking into this whole all these various stories, especially the maternity leave, especially the sexual harassment. Again, they testified and nothing was done. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, and you can't watch, and I don't know if you watch the testimony, but you can't watch the testimony of these female correction officers, and I don't care how hard you are, but it not move your heart, and you almost ready to tear up. Because I mean, like, when she describes the conditions that she had to deal with, you're muted.
You can see what they're dealing with. You can almost feel what they're dealing with.
Right. You can't fake that kind of emotion. It was real. Like, you can't help. And that was a while ago, and I don't know if the county has done anything about that.
We haven't heard anything about it ever since. I doubt it,
No, so we try to keep the issues that we cover like that. We try to keep them alive. We try to keep them, and giving me this opportunity to talk. You know what I'm saying? This is putting some of it back out there, so it doesn't get swept under the rug. So
Thomas Rooney says, "I bet not. I bet they are overworking them, and we won't hear about it until there is an accident."
I tend to agree with that person's opinion. I would agree.
Do you remember the massive overdose a couple of years ago over the summer?
I do. There's so much going on. It's not in the front of my head right now, but I do remember it though. Yes.
We covered that. I believe it was a fentanyl overdose. Some inmates got a hold of some fentanyl, and it spread, and everyone got sick off of it.
I've covered several stories. From the inmate who played ghosts, taking pictures with an inmate. You're not supposed to have your phone and taking pictures.
The selfie, right? The two with the selfies.
We covered several stories of that go on in there.
That stuff is common at jailhouses and stuff like that, but not sexual harassment. Things like that shouldn't, be tolerated or bypassed by any means.
No, and I stand with the female officers. If that was your mother, your sister, your daughter, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And they're pregnant and they got to work these extra hours, and there's no maternity leave. And like I said, there are females. I have females in my family who have had rough pregnancies. Like pregnancy has been very rough on them, and then to work 16 hours on top of that can't be healthy for the child.
Absolutely not. It can end up being a miscarriage.
So the county has to. It's done on the state, and like I said, I'll send you the link. The state tout in 2016 that they have the best comprehensive family leave. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like almost like bragging rights. And from my reading, the county just has to opt in, even if it's giving the officers a chance to pay into it themselves. And I think that should be done, and it's not being done. And I mean, decisions have consequences. There's an election coming up, next year or something. So, that's all maternity leave should never be left to a contract negotiation.
No, of course not. That's like saving a child's life.
Right. The county should just do the right thing. And I know this won't be popular. You know what I'm saying? I'm no, deputy county exec Ken Jenkins ain't gonna like that, but I mean, truth is truth. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it is what it is.
Of course,
how can you say you for women's rights? You know what I'm saying? If you denied them paid leave, and the word is, while there's been no official announcement, Ken Jenkins is going to be running for. George Latimer's not running again. So Ken Jenkins might be running for the top spot, the county executive spot. You know what I'm saying? And
A lot of people need to consider that for when, if
right.
it does happen, he runs. He doesn't care about these guards' maternity leave.
And the local Democratic Party, they all claim to be for women's rights and all of that, and they all made statements with the Roe v. Wade situation, but where are the statements about this though? From our
Nowhere.
Democratic Party, from our leaders, from our elected officials, from the county, where's the statements about that?
Absolutely nowhere, unfortunately. But we'll see. What we have to do is bring up the pressure, like we've been bringing up the pressure for everything else. We need answers. We need to help our back these Westchester County jail guards. They protect us from these inmates and vice versa, whatever.
Lastly, let me just say this too, because we always hear, like, I've heard a lot of cops say, correction officers are not law enforcement. They have almost all the rights that police officers have. I think they can't give you a ticket or something. But let's look at what they don't tell you. So the cops and law enforcement, all counties, state, whatever, they bust their butt to get the worst of the worst off the street. Where do you think they go? These corrections officers now have to be with them. You know what I'm saying? Every day, all day. They deal with the worst of the worst.
They deal with them more than the cops outdoors.
They deal with them, period. But, because the police, they're outside and you see their thing, you don't see what the correction officers do inside. And they deal with the work. They deal with the people we want off the streets. I think we should be thinking about their rights and
there's also a lot of frustration now because, we can't blame them, but, they're seeing these repeat offenders being sent to the jail and then coming right back out, and they're locking them up all over again.
They're not even getting to the jail. They're like, if you get arrested in Mount Vernon for something, you don't even get held overnight. You know what I'm saying? You get your disappearance ticket or whatever it is they give you, and you go right back. You know what I'm saying? Or you get your ticket or whatever it is. So some of them don't even make it to the county jail right now.
That's really ridiculous, and it's sad that anyone has to deal with that.
We need to question our state representatives, and I'm not always for considering law enforcement, especially like things like with CCRBs, and stuff like that. But for something like this, you might want to speak to some law enforcement experts on when you're doing these kind of things, you know what I'm saying, to get some input from them. You still got to do what you got to do, but you might want to consider talking to some law enforcement experts. You know what I'm saying? And, some senior
right.
When you make this. And let me say, we needed bail reform. The community was demanding bail reform, but we weren't specific. And when a lot of the people came on our show and they told us this bail reform was not going to be for anybody with felonies, violent felonies, none of that stuff. It was going to be for misdemeanors. But I'm hearing from law enforcement, I gotta report both sides of it. You know what I mean? I hear from law enforcement, there's people out there with violent felonies, and they're out in the street the next day. They're right back out.
The rapper that shot the NYPD officer a couple of months ago, he just got arrested again for shooting somebody.
I think the Republican running against Governor Hochul, I think somebody tried to attack him with a knife, and that person was released.
Yeah, released
right away. So, I mean, we need some reform. We are elected officials. But we have to demand better. You know what I'm saying? They all come to us for a vote. Like this year in particular, every state representative is up for a vote.
Every single one.
Every state senator, your governor, your lieutenant governor, your AG, who I think has failed the black community a lot, running the chase after Trump. They all up for election, and they all going to expect you to come vote for them in like 6 weeks. You know what I'm saying? But we have to demand what we want or not vote for them. I mean, we put them there. So, they say you get the government you vote, you deserve because you get the government you vote for. So, I mean, we need to demand more, and we need to protect, those that are protecting us. You know what I'm saying? The correction officers, like you hear about police brutality, and that's a big thing in our community. You know what I'm saying? ain't no correction officers abusing us. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Wow.
you know, that but they're housing the worst of the worst.
Of course.
You know, people that we don't want on the street. We want these people off the streets. The correction officers have to deal with these people every day.
You're
So
dealing with them every day,
and,
24/7. You know.
and again, you know, how can anybody in the county, any elected official, any Democrat, local Democrat, the Democratic Party talk about they're for women's rights if they're not getting behind the maternity leave for correction officers and the county workers? Because according to Chris Johnson, his legislative aide had to take her own time because she didn't have maternity leave. So, but especially these correction officers and having to do the working the double shifts, you know what I'm saying, just to accrue some time to have extra time off. Like, come on, that's madness. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially
you have to call it what it is. You know what I'm saying? And you know, that's
it is. What do they do with when it becomes a situation where these inmates are assaulting officers and nothing is being done? That's what I meant to ask you earlier, because I saw a lot of that happening. A lot of inmates are assaulting officers and nothing is being done, especially under the watch of the infamous captain we were talking about.
So in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams has been getting a lot of heat for what he called punitive segregation. He's not talking about solitary confinement, but he's talking about separating those that are abusing officers and abusing other inmates and separating them from the other inmates. You understand what I'm saying? Punitive segregation. I think that's a good idea. I think that needs to be explored. You know what I'm saying? And
they do it with transgender inmates.
Right.
They do it with transgender inmates. They do it with sex offenders. You know,
but you need to do that when you got inmates that are abusing. You got inmates that just what they're doing in the street. So when they come inside, they're doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? They're predators.
Some don't have nothing better. Some even say they'd rather be in jail than out in the streets because they get more in jail than out in the street.
So they're predators on the street. They're going to be predators in jail. They're predators over the other inmates, and since nothing happens to them, they have predatory actions towards the correction officers. You know, and lastly, I want to say, because I don't know how much more time you have, and I definitely want to get this in there. You know, men are always making decisions that affect women's bodies. You know, you see the Supreme Court with Roe versus Wade and stuff. You know, it might be time for a female county executive. I mean, no disrespect. Like, we have to, you know, black and brown people, we fight that we wanted our people at the higher positions, you know what I'm saying, to be in the room where it happens. Well, when it comes to, you know, it's men negotiating what's good for women, even making rules what's good for female inmates, not understanding females. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
we've done stories like that. Like, maybe it's time for, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. It might be time for a female correction county executive. You know, we need people in them rooms where it happens to make those decisions, and maybe, you know what I'm saying, maybe that'll be what can be the answer. Maybe that would be the answer to situations like this with paid maternity leave in some of these situations like that.
So, Westchester Correctional Association, the inmates who sexually abuse officers should be housed with sexual offenders. That's a personal opinion. I can't really agree with that, but coming from someone who has been dealing with it, what do you have to say, Mr. Woodson?
Well, if you're sexually abusing officers, aren't you a sexual offender?
You are, but you have to remember, not all of them are sexual offenses, even though majority of them are.
Well, I mean, you know, it kind of makes sense to me. I mean, put all the sexual offenders together.
It's fair. I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing with it. It's fair.
I mean, somebody named Rodney Whitney said,
who is the current
commissioner? He's a Spano. I believe his name is Joe. I think it's Joe Spano. He's a Spano. I think his name is Joe Spano. You know, one of the worst things that happened, they let Louis Molina, who was the first deputy correction officer, go. You know, when the people were fighting for more black and brown people in leadership, and he was appointed deputy, he was promised that, you know, the commissioner would work for a year or two, and then he was retiring, and then Molina would moved up into the top spot, and he held out for a long time, even though he had offers to run the department and the jails in Vegas. He held off for like almost a year, and eventually he left, and now he's Eric Adams has him as his New York City correction commissioner. Luis Molina was like the highest ranking Latino in law enforcement in Westchester County, and he had done great things, brought the equivalent of My Brother's Keeper to the jail and a lot of other programs, and I think that was a great loss that they let him go, and you know what I'm saying, and they didn't take care of him. So
they didn't take care of him, so he's gonna go somewhere that he's taken care of.
So yeah, I mean, and Ken Jenkins told me, how could I get upset him leaving to go make more money? It wasn't about more money. I talked to Luis Molina a lot. It wasn't about more money. It was about, they keeping their word and, him being the commissioner. You know what I'm saying? And eventually that never happened.
So Rodney, we were talking about the officers that have been dealing with inmates assaulting them. How was the jail dealing with that, and was any action being taken on that, as well as the infamous captain we were talking about earlier? A lot of stuff has been apparently happening under his watch, if he has done anything about these inmates assaulting the officers, right, Mr. Woodson?
Yeah, I get a lot of calls, Ronnie. I'm the editor of Black Westchester. I get a lot of calls from correction officers about female correctional officers being sexually assaulted and sexually harassed by inmates, and a couple of them even testified at the county. And you can go to Black Westchester, you can find a video of the actual testimony, and it's moving when you hear what these women go through. And not only is nothing being done at the jail, they testified for the county, and nothing has been done by the county about it either. So, sexually harassing them is one. She was cornered and like feared for her life. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, they were really coming for her, like, and the inmates know that nothing's really going to get done to them. So, you know what I'm saying? They there's no discipline. There's no, you know what I'm saying? There's no or else. There's no punishment. You lose an hour of free time, of rec time, or something like that.
Some have nowhere to go, so they don't care about leaving. So
right. So I believe that's all. You lose an hour of rec time or something. You know what I mean? Like or whatever that is, and that's not a punishment. And these officers then got to come back the next day, and and then you got to keep dealing with
the same thing. It's just unfair,
So. I mean, you sign up to do the job, and everybody who does the job should be able to do the job, but being sexually harassed and sexually assaulted is not in the job description. So right. We're not talking about, for all those who think, maybe women should be correction officers and stuff like that, you wouldn't have these problems. No, these women, I know a lot of these women, they qualify, but they shouldn't have. They don't sign up. Nobody signs up to be sexually harassed or sexually abused. So, so nothing has been done. They're barely written up. They remain on the block for another officer to deal with. Yeah, basically that's about what I've been told too. So
what do they remain? What do they mean by they remain on the block for another officer to deal with? What I catch is they just leave it off for the next officer that's coming in to deal with. But what's the story behind that?
Just, I mean, if nothing's done, they're still there. Like, there's no discipline. There's no removal. There's no punitive segregation. There's no, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, they're just there. They stay on the block, and they don't remove them or rehouse them. That's what she's
okay. So usually when a situation like this happens, they switch the cell blocks. That's what I'm getting from that.
So I think something like that, and it should be done. But again, I want to keep throwing this term out. Eric Adams, got a lot of heat for it. Punitive segregation, because a lot of people said he wants to bring back solitary confinement. Solitary confinement and punitive segregation are two different things. Punitive segregation is segregating those predatory inmates who are being abusive to other inmates and to the officers. You separate them from all the other inmates who just want to do their time. Like, a lot of people just want to do their time and go home. You know what I'm saying? So but you have these predator bully type dudes that just, they they prey on everybody, so they should be separated, and that's called punitive segregation. That's not solitary confinement. They're not confined. They're just separated. Same thing like you have PC. You separate the protective custody of people from the rest of the people. That's not. It's not solitary confinement. This would be another thing like that, but they would be segregated against themselves, but not against the all the people. The inmates that just want to do their time.
So Ronnie, the problem is that it's not being acknowledged. That's what we're talking about here. It's not being acknowledged. It's being, like they said, it's being pushed to the next side or the next officer.
Right. And I think that's the point I was trying to make. This punitive segregation is not just for the officer safety, but for the inmate safety too. And that's what Eric Adams is saying. He said, if you're going to be abusive to my officers or to other inmates, you need to be segregated away from them. So I think Westchester and other jails need to look at that. I think, that a situation like this with these inmates that are sexually harassing and abusing female correction officers, maybe they should be in segregated, punitive segregation, and they shouldn't be out in the open with everybody else. You know what I'm saying? They should be separated. So I mean, that's just me. My limited knowledge and from the calls I get and the research I've done. I don't claim to be an expert. I've never worked in corrections. You know what I'm saying? My partner works in corrections. And he stopped me from doing a lot of the stories because he's like, no, let's not do that. But it is.
No, I went through the hoops. You already know that. I contacted you before the middle person was supposed to contact you. I was right on the story. I wanted to talk about it, so I went right to you. I want this to be exposed. These people need to know what's going on. I really appreciate all the information you have given us.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt. Everybody who's watching, I think you need to question your elected officials on the county level. And hey, why is this going on? And make them answer some questions. Go to a county legislative meeting. Like, you have your local city council meetings in your municipality. Go to your county legislative meeting. You can attend those and you can sign up to speak and get it on the record and complain. They need to hear from the community. You understand what I'm saying? And your state officials need to hear how you feel about the whole bail reform. You know what I'm saying? The bail reform needs to be reformed. We needed it, but it needs to be reformed. But again, and I keep
election
saying,
year, guys. Right.
And how can any of these elected officials talk about they are for women's rights? Like I said, everybody wrote me a statement about how they felt about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Where are the statements about the maternity leave for correction officers? I'm not even hearing it from the female elected officials. I'm not hearing it from the black elected. I'm not hearing it from any elected officials. Like I said, the only person I knew that spoke to me about it was Chris Johnson, and he said he had a bill. And from what I understand, and like I said, he was asked by Deputy County Exec Ken Jenkins to hold off on it. You know what I'm saying? Because they were going to talk about it. They're going to deal with it as a contract negotiation.
You got to get ready for election year first before you do anything else.
So, before you give away your votes, man, ask these people like what they're doing and tell them, ask them. These are questions you should ask all your elected officials about. So I hope if nothing else comes from this, I hope that's what the people who watch this, I hope they get this, you know what I mean? For my fellow and for the correction officers, next time there's an election for you president, or you might want to. I'm not saying nothing bad. No, I'm not saying nothing bad about the current president. I personally know him. We're cool. You know what I'm saying? But he got his hands full too. So but y'all might want to put some pressure on everybody involved. But again, there's retaliation. They can't use their name. You know what I'm saying? And your elected officials.
It's understandable. These people.
Your elected officials should protect you. Your county executive should elected officials should be protecting them. Because they can't go and obviously going to EEOC is not helping, because I heard officers say they reported to the EEOC and they haven't even heard from EEOC. You know what I'm saying about their complaint? They never got a call from the EEOC. So you know,
So you don't know if it's even acknowledged or not.
he said the mayor gets maternity leave. Why can't the officers?
Well,
Well,
the mayor does not.
is a city.
I'll let you do that.
A mayor is a city municipality elected official and not a county elected official. I don't know. I know the county the county officers are not elected officials are not getting it. That's why Chris Johnson wanted to put it through. His legislative aide had to use her own time when she had a baby, and that was what pushed him to write this bill. You know what I'm saying? But he was asked to put it on hold. So, yeah, I hope people understand a little more what's going on, and what you don't understand, I hope you look up and you ask some questions. Like I said, there's races involved next year on the county level, and for your state, for your bail reform, there's races this year, and they all want your vote. You know what I mean? You have to ask these questions.
Think about that.
Yeah,
Mr. AJ Woodson, Black Westchester Magazine, I greatly appreciate you being on episode number 3 of City Talk tonight. We ran out of time already, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely.
Everybody, Mr.
And
AJ Woodson,
most of these stories I mentioned, you can find on blackwestchester.com. We've have them. They're on there. Thank you for having me, my brother.
No problem, man. Thank you for everything.
All right.